Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Saturday Conversations, a podcast where we can go a little bit deeper with so many folks within the Pittsburgh sports scene. Apologies for last week. I skipped out because of the NFL draft, but we're back this week with one of my favorite people I've ever covered in baseball, any sports period. He's awesome. Certainly somebody with a unique personality and skill set among professional athletes, vocal performance, musical theater, baseball, and now a broadcaster on SportsNet Pittsburgh, the one and only Steven Brault. Steven, thank you for joining me. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Jason. I got two things about your intro. One,
All right.
I can't believe you took a week off. I'm embarrassed for you.
No, I didn't take a week off. I just took a podcast off.
That's what I'm saying.
Well,
You took a whole podcast off. I mean, that's just, I thought you were a hard worker. Anyway, second thing, I appreciate being introduced as unique. That is one of the nicer ways that you can say odd and different. I'll take that. Unique is good. That has a good connotation to it. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
You are unique. You're talented. You're funny. You do a great job. And we're going to talk about a lot of that. So much to get into on this podcast. I want to talk about the current team a little bit. We always do that here, but more of Steven's lifelong love of broadcasting, what he's doing in his post-playing career, the growth that he's already experienced in just over a year. Talk about some new initiatives on SportsNet Pittsburgh. Steven putting up with Michael McHenry as well as he does. And also the idea of practicing and how you get better at a new trade. But first, I want to tell you a little bit about Greenewalt Roofing Company. When you think of great roofs, you think of Greenewalt Roofing Company. With over 20 years experience, Greenewalt knows your roof is your home's first line of defense. Rain, wind, snow, and ice. What are you doing over here?
I'm making a roof.
Okay.
It's good, right? Maybe a little thicker in the middle. There we go.
Very nice. So that's why Greenewalt Roofing standard for perfection is so important. You can trust that their team of experienced installers will treat your property like it's its own. When it comes to roof replacements, Greenewalt Roofing is Pittsburgh's only choice. You can visit them at Greenewalt Roofing today. Call 412-314-8882 and schedule your free estimate. PA contract through 36262. Be jealous of that quality of read, my friend.
That was really good, man. Not a single mistake. I'm so proud of you.
I've been practicing all night. All right. So a little bit about the current team, Steven, and I want to use your perspective as a former player. Obviously, things have not gone according to plan, right? No. They're scuffling. They're trying to battle out of it. What's it like being in a room like that? I know it's not fun, but what sort of conversations are being had? What kind of stuff is being talked about?
I unfortunately never had the opportunity to be on a playoff major league team. I made it to the playoffs multiple times in the minor leagues, but I never made it in the big leagues. We got, there were times when we got to September and we were pretty close and we had a chance and we just never could pull through. So, for me, when it's early like this and you're really struggling, there's only a few things you can do. I had a manager in AAA. His name is Andy Barquette. He was with Indy for a little while. We had to start where it's 2017. At the beginning of the year, we were like, 8-17 or something like that. And before the season, he had told us, hey, we're going to have the most fun out of anybody in the league. That's the most important thing. That helps you play better, whatever. Yeah. And so then when we got to that point, we finally had another team meeting. And so we're all like, oh, here it goes. Here comes the big switch. But instead, our manager got in front of us and said, hey, guys, you're playing terrible, but we're still going to have the most fun out of anybody in baseball, and it's going to turn around. And having that kind of, how do you say that? He kind of hit the same point again, right? Yeah. So he gives us that same message, re-emphasis. There you go. To move us forward and to not say, okay, now everything has to change. You guys got to play really tense because we have to be better. That worked for us. We ended up being the best team in the league. We went on multiple crazy runs that season where nobody could beat us for weeks. And so that is one way to go about it. I think in the major leagues, it's probably a little bit different. There's a little bit more intensity. There's a little bit more pressure. That's just the truth. It's the major leagues. And so, look, it's not fun. You're not having good conversations, but serious conversations need to be had, right? You have to execute in important situations in games. Bullpen's got to come through more consistently. Offense has to produce more runs. It's just the conversations are one thing. It's about actually going out on the field and doing it. That's the issue. That's the difficult part. So who knows? It kind of depends on the way that the coaches choose to inspire their players, because I always say this, man, people I think really undervalue coaches, especially nowadays. Yeah. And I always say, if we didn't need coaches, then we wouldn't have them. right? An organization wouldn't pay to have coaches and managers if they didn't need to be there. Yes, bunch of grown men playing baseball, but it's a bunch of grown men playing baseball who have played baseball their whole lives, right? So there is an aspect to your manager's always kind of a father figure to you, and you want to do well, and you want to make him proud. That's just kind of part of it. And so whatever's going on, whatever conversations are being had, we'll hope that they can work out and turn around, because last night Cubs come into town, first game, and they're the best offense in baseball, and they just showed that again, but the offense couldn't get going, so something's got to change.
So we're recording this on Wednesday afternoon, by the way. We're going to miss some time. This comes out on Saturday morning, Steven, but
sorry.
No, you're fine, man. You're fine. I mean, I've learned that about baseball. Between Wednesday and Saturday, man, it's an eternity. I'm not even going to try to pretend to be current. But I think we've got a pretty good read on this team, and it baffles me, like I think a lot of other people, because you see it. You see really good things. You see the talent. It comes out. You see what this is supposed to look like, and there's just too much inconsistency right now. I mean, that's the area that I think, like, we've seen flashes of the bullpen. We've seen flashes of the starting rotation. We've seen flashes of the offense. We've seen flashes of good fundamentals. It's just not that they haven't put it all together. I hope they do. It'd be a lot more entertaining. But yeah, it's, I was going to ask you what like the correctable things are, but I think that's probably answering my own question.
Right. Right now, the truth is correctable things are pretty much everything, right? Everybody can play better.
Everything more consistently.
Yeah. Everything more consistently. That's the hardest part, which why I'll point out, since we're talking about the Pirates right now, which is why Oneil Cruz has been so different this year. And I've been calling for this will be his first All-Star year. And I think that
he's got to be their All-Star, right?
Absolutely. And him and Skenes, right? But with Cruz, the reason is because he's been doing the amazing stuff for years. We've seen the StatCast crazy numbers, huge home runs, balls hit 122 miles an hour, but he was doing it very rarely. Now this year he's doing it very consistently, walking a lot more, and so that is what's changing as a player for him, is the consistency at the plate. So the whole team that needs to be the drive, is to be consistent and always be a threat, just like the way Oneil Cruz has been so far this year.
So I want to ask you our last question about the current team, because I think this is an interesting dynamic, and it's specific to Paul Skenes. Well, I guess it's not really, but I mean, I'm so impressed with him as a pitcher, not a thrower. Like, this guy has, I don't know, 7-8 pitches, and we've seen him sort of evolve and change based on the outing and what is necessary. I was wondering if you could, from a pitcher's eyes, like, what's it like to watch him kind of play this cat and mouse game and, find what he has and use different things. I mean, it's almost unfair in a way that he has all these physical talents, but there's also the finesse there. What's it like as a former pitcher watching Paul Skenes and that aspect of his game?
So when I was coming up, I always think that I was very honest with myself about who I was, especially as a Major League Baseball player, because when it comes down to it, there are some guys who are just better. Right. I mean, it's just the truth. Yeah. When I was coming up, I remember my first big league spring training watching Gerrit Cole throw a bullpen. And I was like, I'm not that guy, and it was just the truth. It's like, okay, so I got to figure out how to be as successful as I can for as long as I can against the best hitters in the world, but I can't do it like him. I need to find my own way of doing it. And watching Paul Skenes now, it reminds me of watching Gerrit Cole, except that he's got the feel and the mind of somebody like me, right? So he can see that he's the best pitcher in the world, but he can also see that there are times when he has to change what he's doing in order to keep those numbers and keep those, just keep guys off the base path, keep runs from scoring. Perfect example, his last outing, Teoscar Hernandez gets on third base with nobody out. Whoever got on third base with nobody out, and Teoscar Hernandez comes up, and his first pitch to Teoscar Hernandez is a sinker, which he throws 5% of the time, 4% of the time, but it's 98 miles an hour. It gets in on Teoscar's hands. He's looking for a fastball, bounces it to third, and he can't score the run, right? Then he ends up getting out of the inning. But it's stuff like that. A lot of times a pitching coach will tell you, never use your fourth best pitch in your biggest situation. So with a runner on third and nobody out, you're going to your best pitches. Well, Paul Skenes has 7 pitches, and all of them are better than any pitch that I ever threw. That's the truth. And it's fine. Like, he is a different level. what makes him so much better than the average pitcher is that he still takes the time to learn and change when he has to, and he's athletically able to do it. I mean, he's got everything. He's got the mentality, he's got the skills, he's got the body. It's truly, I'm so glad that in my first coverage of Major League Baseball, I get to cover Paul Skenes. I watch every single pitch he throws. I know him, I think, not as a person, but as a pitcher better than almost anybody, because I analyze every single pitch he throws. And the guys, he's incredible, man. He's going to be, if he stays healthy, he's going to be one of the greats. And it's really, really cool to be able to watch that from the beginning and it be so obvious from the get-go. It's awesome. He's crazy.
Yeah. Well, speaking of having the body and the talent and all that stuff, we're going to talk about you in this next segment. I want to talk about Steven's path to broadcasting, his desire to be viewed a little bit differently than most players who retire and move on to something else. But first, here's a message from the Bradenton Area Convention and Visitors Bureau.
Embrace the laid-back charm of island life while sinking your toes in the sand and discovering real, authentic Florida in the Bradenton area. Unspoiled beauty and pristine beaches, a vibrant waterfront downtown energized by local arts and culture, fresh Floridian cuisine with a flourish of rich history, and friendly locals ready to welcome you to this preserved paradise on Florida's Gulf Coast. Plan your visit today at BradentonGulfIslands.com.
And welcome back to Saturday Conversations. We're chatting with former Pirates pitcher, current broadcaster Steven Brault about his path. And Steven, when we talked a couple years ago at the winter meetings, I remember you telling me about falling asleep listening to Padres games. And, I know you weren't the biggest Dodgers fan or a Dodgers fan at all, but Vin Scully was a big part of your, learning this trade.
Right.
Joe Buck, Dave Sims, you've gotten to know him, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. One thing I never asked you that I'm curious about, like when did you come up with this was going to be your post-playing plan? Like this all along, like as a kid, you were saying, when I'm done playing, I'm going to go into broadcasting. I want to do play-by-play. Or was it sometime like during your playing career, you're like, I think I can make a career out of this thing?
I think it's kind of a mix. So I always thought it would be cool to be a broadcaster, but I never really thought about actually being one, because I grew up doing music and performing. And so my whole life, especially when it came to college, was, am I going to play baseball or am I going to, go and try to make it in music or theater or something along that vein? And as I got through college, I got drafted. So I was like, all right, we'll put music on the back burner, put performance on the back burner, but we can come back to that, because I didn't know I didn't know my career was going to last as long as it did, So I thought that was going to be, I'll play baseball for a few years and then I'll go to the performance side. But obviously the baseball thing ended up working out pretty well. So I always knew I wanted to be a broadcaster as soon as I got into in the major leagues and realized that I was going to be there for a little while. Because I am not the kind of guy who can sit around. I had a lot of people telling me, hey, you finished your career, you've been go your whole adult life, just take a year off. And I was like, I can't do that. I would lose my mind. I have to be doing something. The off seasons are long enough, like that's 4 months and I'm already itching to do something. And so for me, it was being able to stay in the game was a part of it, but also being able to use the performance aspect. And I just love the idea of being able to narrate great moments in baseball. As a coach, you get to kind of touch the game more, right? As a broadcaster, you don't really touch the game. You're a viewer. The difference is that as a broadcaster, I get to just watch baseball games, which I do anyway. This is what I do it all the time. I'll put on the 4 games at the same time and I'm just flipping through watching it because I love it so much. And I thought broadcasting would be a nice way to kind of merge the performance and the baseball aspects of my life as much as I could. And I'll tell you what, man, it has worked incredibly well. I love it. I love it so much. It is, I work at it really hard. I try to get better. And most importantly, it never gets old. I know I haven't been doing it for very long, but every day I go into the studio, and especially when I'm working with Michael, but anybody who's there, and I'm pumped. I can't wait to talk about the Pirates. Doesn't matter how well they're doing, how poorly they're doing. It is fun. And I love that aspect of it. So that's one of the main reasons. I mean, the truth is I love doing things that I love. And if I can get paid to do it, then that's even better. So
same deal, man. It's fun to not work.
Exactly. So Candelaria has that quote, I never worked a day in my life because I could throw a baseball, and that's really how it feels. And it feels the same way now. The only difference is now I get to play basketball at the gym, because when you're playing baseball, you're not allowed to do that. So adding it in. Yeah.
You any good? Are you any good? You probably are.
I've got some catching up to do. That's for sure. Yeah. It's been a few years, but I'm getting back into it. Yeah.
Okay. So when you started, I remember you telling me about this. You would take just a random game and mute the sound, and you'd learn about, little context, get some anecdotes, research the game or whatever. And then you would call play-by-play. And obviously you would keep, I don't know, an audio track, a video track, maybe both. You'd go back and review it. Have you ever gone back and reviewed some of those? And have you seen like the progress, and how have you grown when you see
Yeah, I have. It's funny because I still have some of those clips saved on my phone. And so I'll go to my sound recordings and I'll go listen to it. And some of them I would do as radio, some of them I would do as TV. And then, some of them I would do as color, which the way I would do that is I would turn the sound on and I would listen to the play-by-play guy. And when he asked a question or something, I'd pause the game and I would act as I was responding. Yeah, exactly. Because I don't want to be a one-trick pony. That's kind of something that I think I can bring to this side of things. I've already done all three professionally at this point now. In my first year, I obviously worked in the studio quite a bit. I did play-by-play for the Dodgers and then for MLB Network over the offseason. And then I did the World Baseball Classic qualifiers with Greg Caserta as play-by-play, and I did color for those in Tucson this year. So I've done them all now. So my thing is making sure that none of them fall apart. I want to be able to do anything that anybody wants me to do. Basically.
That's cool.
Anyway, I can talk about baseball. I'm happy to do it, kind of idea.
And so you guys are doing something different too. I wanted to get your perspective on this. The Unobstructed Views telecast, which happened, I believe, last night. You guys had Josh Harrison on. What's that like, hosting that with Fort? Kind of a little bit more casual conversation, almost like the Manning cast. Like,
right.
It looks pretty sweet. What do you think of it?
Yeah, it's really fun. It's very different. I always kind of thought of myself as getting into the more serious side of baseball broadcasting. It's why I never really wanted to get into the whole podcast thing. I thought about it, but I like the idea of being respected as a legitimate broadcaster who also likes to have fun and all that stuff. And so the Unobstructed Views with Michael we did it once and it was a blast, man. We had such a good time. Unfortunately, the Pirates lost, so there's not too many positive things to talk about when it came to the Pirates, unfortunately. But man, it was great. The conversations we were able to have that we basically have when we're watching the game together, when we're doing the pregame, postgame, and we're taking our notes. Well, we're also, we're talking through every play. I mean, every pitch, everything. It's what we do. And so being able to do that in more of an official capacity was great. And I can't wait to do it again. I think the next one is May 30th or something like that. And so like just being able to kind of put what we do in the studio during a game and throw it on TV and, have people watch and get to interact with us. Dude, it was a blast. It was so much fun. We had some really good moments. And Jay Hayes' interview was immaculate. The dude is hilarious.
He's really good. He's been on this show before.
There you go.
He was great. I love him.
Dude, he's the best. I asked him about what he meant when somebody, he'd get out or he'd get a hit. He'd come back in the dugout and he'd say, he booty. And he know it. He'd always say that. So I asked him, what do you mean by that? He's great. He's great.
And last thing on this topic, Steven, before we go to the third segment, you got to do some play-by-play last year at Dodger Stadium. What was that like? Were you nervous? Were you having the time of your life?
Both. Yeah.
Both.
Both of those things can coexist. It's I've learned that in playing Major League Baseball that they can definitely both coexist. And I mean, getting thrown into play-by-play last year was insane. I never thought it would happen. I thought I was going to have to work for years and years until somebody would even give me a shot. But man, it was a blast. I worked with Kevin Young. He was great, super helpful. And just my first day there, I didn't get a press pass, so I wasn't allowed to go on the field. So it was just totally out of the circle of what was going on. So that wasn't super great. Yeah.
We couldn't give you a break.
Played. So learning how it all worked on the fly was really fun, because that was the first time I had ever called a game play-by-play. I had done it by myself, I'd done it. I even had friends that I was Zooming with, and we would watch games together, and I would be play-by-play and my buddy would be color. We'd watch the same game and call the game together. That was the extent of my play-by-play experience, and just jumped right in. And man, it was so cool. And unfortunately, the Pirates didn't win, so I didn't get to call a Pirates win, and I would not have stolen Greg's line. I can't say raise a Jolly Roger. I would have to say something else, maybe just Pirates win for my beginning. But dude, it was great. I loved being able to just, like I said, narrate the game, be a part of the game, feel like all I'm doing is watching the game, but I get to kind of describe it, and it's just, oof, it gives me the tingles. I love it.
Good stuff, man. In our last segment, I want to talk to Steven about the end of his playing career, what's next for him, and kind of how he's learned to practice on this side of the fence. I think there's some links to stuff he's experienced with vocal performance and all of that. Before we do that, though, I want to remind you this show is brought to you by Edgar Snyder and Associates. Law firms come and go, but what law firm has been here in Western PA fighting for injury victims for more than 40 years? Go ahead and make a roof out of this one, buddy. Good luck with that. Edgar Snyder and Associates. What firm has a staff of over 130 people who live and work here? Edgar Snyder and Associates. Law firms come and go, but Edgar Snyder and Associates is a name you can always trust. Remember, there's never a fee unless they get money for you. If you've been hurt in an accident, call them at 1-800-94-EDGAR or visit edgarsnyder.com. They're available 24/7. All right, so Steven pitched for the Pirates 2016 to 21. Then he went to the Cubs, pitched 9 games in Chicago, and you spent 2023 in the Atlantic League as a hitter.
I did.
How did that happen?
Well, to be completely honest, so I worked all off season as a pitcher. I got back up to throwing 95 after being injured again with the Cubs. I developed a sweeper because that's what everybody's doing, and it was nasty. And I threw a lot for scouts. I went to multiple facilities. I threw against the minor leaguers for Padres and the Dodgers, a bunch of places in Arizona. And I dominated everywhere, and nobody wanted me. So that was when I realized that my injury history was going to be the deterrent. So I was going to have to go to independent ball to prove that I could stay healthy. And then I got to independent ball, and I threw a live BP. And before the season started, my arm exploded again. So I was like, well, I'm not going to pitch anymore. That's it. I can't do it. So I asked my manager if he'd let me try hitting, because I just wasn't done yet. I just needed that last season. And he said yes. And dude, it was so much fun. It was great to feel like a baseball player again.
Yeah.
You're a pitcher for a long time. And the truth is, I grew up playing outfield, first base, and also pitching, but I was not a pitcher.
Yeah.
And so getting back to that side of it was an absolute blast. Hit some homers, hit some doubles, it was great.
Stat line, Steven, 283 average, 327 on base, 465 slug. You would have taken a 495 slug.
I would have, yeah.
11 doubles, 7 homers, 27 RBIs, 30 runs scored in 58 games. Man, be proud of that. That's awesome.
And the funny thing was, how many games was that?
58.
58. That's because I was hurt like 4 times during the season.
Were you?
Yeah. So one, my arm kept going out, and that was when I kind of realized like this isn't going to work. Yeah. The other thing, I got knocked out robbing a home run and hitting my head against the wall, but I did rob the home run. I robbed 3 home runs.
Really?
In the outfield. Yeah, dude. It was so much fun.
You were like Kamikaze Tanaka from Major League 2.
I was. It's exactly what I was. I was going all out, man. And all those little like, you kind of get scars for like your raspberries on your knees and your elbows. Well, I hadn't played outfield in so long, sliding into bases. All those were reopening, and it's just, my whole legs and arms were just torn to shreds. And I loved every second of it. It's great.
Full disclosure. Have you ever thought about trying to come back?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're only 33.
I know.
Still do it.
If I could, I would.
Yeah.
I think about it all the time because my arm doesn't hurt. Just like sitting here right now. If I work out, multiple times a week. I can play basketball, like I said. But the violent motion that is throwing a baseball does not work for me. I just can't do it. So I can do it for like, I know I could build up. I could get myself all the way back up to that normal velocity. and then I would be healthy for about a month, and then my arm would explode again. It's just unfortunate. My injury that I got was a career ender. It happens, but I'm a silver lining type of guy. And because my career ended earlier, I got to get into broadcasting earlier, which means I'll be able to get to where I want to be much earlier than I would have if I had played. So, take it as you will. I always look for the positive.
Good stuff, man. All right. So let's talk about that broadcasting path that you're on. I mentioned earlier some of the people that you've surrounded yourself with, people to give you criticism. And I remember talking to you at the winter meetings. You were telling me about, getting that, I don't know, tough love is the right word. Like somebody to tell you that you stink, you need to improve. Right. Like, in my world, that's having an editor that rips up your copy and says like, this stinks, do it again.
Start over.
Which is, it's great. It's awesome. You want to get edited. So how much has that helped you? And is there any relation between, like, obviously in your singing and performance, like you've had to stop and say like, oh, this isn't good, I have to fix it. I have to be able to kind of self-police or whatever to do this a different way. How much does that maybe help?
It helps a lot. I think that's one of the beauties of baseball in general, to be honest with you. Playing baseball as a kid, you learn how to deal with failure. And I think that's very important. It's a very important thing to learn, because other sports, you fail when you lose a game, but you don't fail as often in games that you even win. Your team wins and you go for 4 and you strike out 3 times, And so I think that's something that really helped me getting into broadcasting and life in general, is you learn, I need somebody to tell me when I've failed, when I haven't been good enough. And so, I've reached out to some people, and, some broadcasters have been really helpful for me. Dave Sims, Spook Shambi, guys that have been awesome. Greg Caserta, who's now doing the MLB Strike Zone thing that they do on there. And just honestly, just having people listen to my stuff and tell me why I'm not good. And that kind of thing for me reminds me of performing in a lot of ways, because I had vocal coaches that I would sing a song and they'd be like, that was not good. And, if my mom
it sounds ruthless, but it's right.
Right. If my mom listened to it, she'd be like, that's great. But my vocal coach knows what I'm trying to work on, what I'm trying to make better. And they'll give you a little bit more of an honest answer. And so it's nice to have that. The one thing that you'll know is some people can't handle getting the real tough criticism. You have to be coachable. If you want to get better, you have to have a little bit of humility in knowing that there's people that are always going to be better than you, and what better people to learn from than the people that are better than you. So try to take that with me a little bit, and then try not to get too frustrated and bang my head into a wall too often,
Yeah. One of my favorite stories I ever wrote, Penguins goalie Matt Murray, you may or may not know who that is, but I went up to Thunder Bay, Ontario and spent some time with him. And I came back and I wrote this story. Yeah. I was all excited to tell this story about Matt Murray. I turn it in. Our sports editor at the time, Michael Sansorino, looks at it. He's like, it's wrong. It's a wrong story. And like ripped it to shreds. I wanted to kill him. He's like, no, this is what I think. This is where you're missing. This is how you get there. Like, and he coached me through it. And like, I was mad for a day, but when I look in hindsight, I'm like, I am so glad that he said something and was the jerk for a little bit, because it made me better. And I appreciated it.
You got to have people who are willing to be the jerk. Yeah. Some people just want to be nice.
Nope. Doesn't always work, man.
Nope. Definitely
doesn't always work. All right. So I'll get you out of here on this, Steven. The goal is what? You've grown this role a whole bunch. You've done a bunch of different things already in a short period of time. What's the be all end all? In 10 years, where would you like to be, or where do you want to take your career on this side of the fence?
So I'll give you 2. 10 years from now, I want to be consistently somewhere calling games, whether that's color, play-by-play. I mean, I'm not even going to put a cap on it. I just want to be calling games. And then the overarching goal, eventually I want to call the World Series. That's the overarching goal. And I feel like if the goal is not the highest goal, then what's the point? I've always felt that way. Did the same thing in Major League Baseball. People tell you, well, what are the chances you're going to get there? And it's like, I don't care. Like, I'm going to try, like,
it's not the point, man. Like, why am I not going to shoot high?
Yeah. Right. What's the point of going for something if you're not going for the top level of what you want? Maybe I'll never call a major league game, and what, I'll be fine with that. It's not like I'm going to feel like a failure for not getting there. But yeah, I mean, that's the goal. I want to be the best, and I want people to know who I am as a game caller and go, oh yeah, that guy played. Oh, that's so weird. And that's kind of the goal. So we'll see, man. I'm just going to work my butt off and see where we go.
Awesome. Great stuff, Steven. I appreciate you doing this. Make sure you check out Steven Brault on SportsNet Pittsburgh. He'll be all over the place. Have a good call, man.
Thanks. Good to see you, Jason.
All right. And make sure you like and subscribe. You can get all of these videos and so much more from our Post-Gazette, YouTube, and North Shore Drive podcast teams. Talk to you next Saturday on Saturday Conversations.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.
It's actually a pretty sick song, I'm not going to lie.
It's not bad. Yeah. And you can get away with